Welcome to Default Assault, where we take on everything by default. I am your host, Demosthenes, and with me today, as always, is our co-host, Mr. Kyle Nash. How's it going, Kyle?
Oh, Demos, it's a good time tonight. I know that the most recent episode I shared with the world, we shared with the world, my what is it, most overrated comedies, and we're back to Marvel stuff. Yay, Marvel stuff. I have no idea how that happened, that I'm such a Marvel stuff person with movies, but it did. And let's do it.
Tonight we will be talking about Spider-Man Homecoming. Spider-Man, literally, Homecoming to Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's gotten a little bit of I've heard a lot of mixed reactions to the film, generally positive. Nothing particularly negative. I haven't heard anybody who outright hated the film, at least anybody prominent. But there is a little bit of a mixed reaction. I'm looking forward to discussing this with you. But before we delve into it, tell me, Kyle, what were your expectations of Homecoming?
I mean, look, we hinted at it already. I mean, it was gonna be pretty low going into it. It's not like I expected it to be horrible. I had better expectations for it than when I went into Ant-Man. At least in this case, I'm familiar with the Spider-Man story. Obviously, the character's relatively well known, and I didn't have a high bar set for it. And overall, that's kind of where it started at. I knew that he was going to be played more as a piece of the MCU rather than being a featured character. It wasn't going to be an epic like the Sam Raimi films that featured Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst. And yeah, I expected it. I expected it to be a different animal, because to try to remake those movies in itself would be thoroughly difficult. I mean, this is the first time that the Marvel film world has dealt with something that didn't have has dealt with something that had a well-known or a high-level performing predecessor. Like, there were Captain America movies and Hulk movies in the past, but nothing. Those movies were crap, and they weren't going to overshadow either Avengers or the individual movie version in the case of Captain America. So
Hell, after the tease that we got in Civil War, everybody was looking forward to this. And I actually,
May, yeah. Wait, what?
Hot Aunt May. I'm all about Hot Aunt May, which I thought 5 years ago, I never thought I would ever utter that sentence. In reality, I might be jumping the gun when I say this, so this might be a tease to the rest of the episode. But I will say that I actually, comparatively, I think I enjoyed his turn in Civil War a little bit more than I enjoyed him in Homecoming. Very different beasts of movies, but I will say my expectations for this film, I wasn't particularly excited for this. Not at the same level that I was for Guardians 2. Well, obviously, right, because of its predecessor, or even Thor 3. And I mentioned Thor 3 specifically because the other two Thor films, well, the first one was good. The second one, I consider to be either the worst or second worst Marvel film. So coming from that, one would say that with Spider-Man's great turn in Civil War, that I'd probably be more excited for Homecoming. But I don't know, and I think there was a big kerfuffle about the trailer and how it gave away. People were claiming that it gave away a lot of the movie, and I will say this is the reason I try to avoid trailers, because up until with the exception of one twist, which we'll get to later in the spoiler section, I thought that I had already seen the film, like beat by beat. That trailer gave away so much, it was offensive in its own way.
I can't speak on that because I didn't see the trailer, so you will be getting my reaction en natural. Look, I'll put it this way: a lot of the reaction that I've heard, I think what I've heard said more than one, yourself included, was it's fine.
Spider-Man Homecoming specifically.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. And for this movie, I was quite a bit more excited than that. So for whatever that's worth. I thought this movie was exactly what it needed to be and a bit more. What it brought to the table, blatantly as well as subtly, was fantastically done. I think at least a few of these topics are to come up later, so I don't want to spend too much time on it now. But the long and the short is, I was much more excited when I walked out of there. And the whole, I think there's a whole lot of what's his word, analogy, metaphor present in the movie to speak to kind of the reaction that this movie, I think it's possible that they kind of predicted the reaction that they're getting. And there are certain things I feel like I can pick out of the story that, are kind of symbolic of them expecting this reaction, kind of like you can pull certain things out of the Avengers that claim that. But,
well, I will say this, I didn't think the movie was bad, nor
right.
do I think it's a poor movie. I honestly think it's very middle of the road in comparison to all the other films in the MCU. I think this was the 15th or 16th. It's insane that they have done this many films in such a short amount of time. When the James Bond film, they're catching up with the James Bond films, and they've been doing them for over 50 years. That happens when you release 3 films a year. But I will say it's probably, in my opinion, it's about middle of the road of the Marvel films. But it did 3 things, and it did 3 things very, very well. A, the casting. By far, the primary cast members are superb. Tom Holland is Spider-Man and Peter Parker. I honestly felt that with the previous non-MCU iterations, the Sam Raimi films and the Amazing Spider-Man duology,
that other one, like, that would, to me, that would be as awkward as a 4th Indiana Jones movie if that existed. And since we're in this dojo, that doesn't exist. Okay.
Sure. Like Andrew Garfield, I honestly felt he was a good Spider-Man. His Peter Parker sucked. Tobey Maguire, I honestly kind of felt the other way around. This is the first time where I think that Holland, I mean, he really nailed it. He sold me on it. He seemed very genuine, vulnerable, and earnest. Perfect. Michael Keaton.
Love that they went with the angle that they did. I mean, yeah, okay, sure. They stuffed the 20-year-olds in high school to make Peter Parker kind of seem like he's a high schooler, and then got them the hell out of there quickly so he could be a college student and all that, and then it's not awkward. No, I like that we got high school Spider-Man. I like that Peter Parker was a kid, because that's the way I feel like it fits better into the universe to transition him into what it looks like they're going to try to do with him in the MCU.
So it was very obvious that they were going for kind of a John Hughes 1980s vibe.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's a friend of the show, shouts to Jen Halp, who like, I'm like, she's gonna like this movie because it kind of reminds me of elements of Can't Hardly Wait, which is a completely trash movie from around 98, but definitely had that high school vibe, especially in the scene where they're at the party and all that other stuff. And John Hughes is an excellent drop too. I mean, I don't know if Spider-Man Peter Parker has some other, co-ed he's, lusting after or whatever. Oh, yeah, you do. It's there in the movie. I definitely got that. That's an excellent call. That's why I stopped you. I felt like that was worth.
I feel like I don't even have to make the call, because the film is so intent on pushing this homage that it literally features a clip from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, just to remind its audience, yeah, this is kind of what we're going for. So here it is. Very, very subtle, interesting filmmaking. But number 2 is actually genuinely a very funny film. With the exception of Guardians of the Galaxy, I felt like this was the one Marvel movie that really went towards the comedic angle. And judging from the fact that it is, a large part of it is a high school story, it makes sense for that. And number 3, I like, and for me it was very welcome that it was a lower key approach to the whole film. No beams in the freaking sky, no like 15-year-old Peter Parker versus freaking Amazonian gods and Loki flying in from the sky and the world is in danger. None of that kind of crap. I like the lower, smaller scale story, appropriate for the character, appropriate for his surroundings. I thought those three elements the film hit very well.
Yeah, exactly. Combine that with the baby monitor protocol and the training wheels protocols that were in part of the movie. Excellent devices, in my opinion. The whole situation was, well, they made him a street level character, which I thought was excellent, and just how that all worked very well to remind us, look, not every one of these bleeping things has to be a giant island about ready to fall and create a giant crater and stuff. Not everything is Sokovia, right?
I was really happy to see a superhero actually doing heroic small scale stuff again. So, harkens back to the Donner Superman, where you have montages of him like, saving kittens from trees and so forth, and helping the people around him, wanting to, this is a film where you actually got to see the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. It was a nice touch. I liked it.
Yeah, definitely. That is wonderful. I think there's one even there where they make it funny where he accidentally messes with somebody who he thinks he's stopping, but it's really no. I don't want to ruin the scene, but there's quirky elements in there too. I'm really behind that. Yeah, I'm with you definitely.
I can never picture Iron Man swooping into a suburb and trying to retrieve a little kid's lost bike. That's entertaining. And then he's sitting at the side of the building eating a churro. That would be entertaining, I think, but you're never gonna see it.
I was very disappointed by the complete and total lack of shawarma in this film. That's right.
Have you ever had shawarma?
I have not.
I have never had it. I didn't even know it existed. See, superhero films can teach kids about culture. They're performing a public service.
Anyways.
So yeah, before we delve into spoilers, what was your overall impression of the film?
I thought it was great. It was exactly what we needed to be in more. You have arguably you had a good villain in this movie too. I think that's something that hasn't gotten enough attention in all these. It's fine. The actual the nature of the villain, first of all, as played by Michael Keaton, the 89 Batman, he did fantastic. I bought everything he was doing from head to toe, and just all of it. The everything he did as the Vulture was fantastic. I'll leave it at that. I really like that character.
Last year, I had the opportunity to speak with Michael Keaton. And if I had a second opportunity, I would ask him, what the hell is it with you and dressing up like flying creatures?
What's with the bird thing? Seriously, dude, help me out.
Between Batman, Birdman, and this, I swear that the only reason he signed on to it is like, oh, I'll be playing a vulture? Ah.
There is a clause for wings in his contracts. I'm just saying.
It must be. I think he's trolling us. And in his attempt to troll us, he gave us one of the better Marvel villains.
Why not?
So keep it up.
That bar is set low, but he still did it.
Okay, let's drop into spoilers, because while we're talking about Michael Keaton, I have to get into this portion. So,
all right, class, spoilers, bitches, spoilers.
Michael Keaton, I will say this. When I alluded earlier as having seen the trailer and the film being very, very predictable all the way through, that twist, even though, let's be honest, okay, it's not the most unique twist in the whole world.
The execution is awesome.
The execution is awesome.
Yes.
I got more of a spine-tingling sensation and a threat of danger from Michael Keaton's devilish "I know who you are" smile than almost any action scene in the movie. The two scenes in the car and the house where between Parker and the Vulture are the best scenes in the film. Worth alone the price of admission. It's very. I mean, it almost harkens back to a similar scene in the original Spider-Man. That scene where they're having, where Willem Dafoe is over and they're having a dinner at Aunt May's, and he's slowly putting two and two together about who it is.
The
It's that.
messenger, right?
Yeah, it's the exact same scene, the exact same idea, but I think executed much better
Right.
in this film.
Well, it's hard to compare those scenes because um, the way that Toombs, aka the Vulture, once I'm gonna call it what it is. Once Liz outs him in the car unintentionally, the speech he delivers in that car about how he's willing to protect what he does to keep his family, prosperous, was flipping wonderful. But the part that you get, and I mean, I felt like the Willem Dafoe thing, that was all just horror and I'm gonna kill you. There was no friendliness at all.
It stopped just short of that. Yeah, they didn't have that particular exchange.
Exactly, and the fact that he saved Liz and DC and all this other stuff was great, and it set up that situation, and I think that also lent Toombs to be a far more sympathetic character as a villain, making him more full. I'm not just here because I have daddy issues or I'm trying to blow up the world because I'm a pissed off robot just cuz. No. First of all, the government and the 1% take over my stuff from me and my people, and I got to try to find a way to bail them out. Some bureaucrat tells me I overextended myself, even though I did everything legally I was supposed to and did my job and played by the rules. And then I got to punch this guy right in the face. And it was great. That was right at the open. And now this twerp ass kid, after all I've accomplished for what I think it is, eight years or whatever, is going to be all up in my business. No. Not about that life. And then when Spider-Man makes essentially refuses the opportunity for the olive branch, action ensues, and the way that all went was fantastic. And I think that I'm going to even say I liked the Vulture better than Green Goblin in Raimi's Spider-Man, because the Goblin is always all about him, whereas you could really see where Toombs was coming for. And they always have this the working man villain out there. It seems like there's so many of them. This one was one of the better ones executed in some time. And I think it really kind of sets a tone for really giving the point of view of the street level characters, as well as another spin on, the Avengers as 1%ers even.
There was more at stake with the villain. They both had their lives at stake, and right. I harkens back. It's an age-old adage that a hero is only as good as his villain. Obviously, that's been the biggest critique of the MCU films, and funny enough, they made a big deal, and I think that this is slight BS, and I'll get to it in a moment. But they made a big deal about how this wasn't an origin story for Spider-Man. We've already done the origin story, and yet we have we have a big origin story in this film, and it's the Vulture. We start the film with him, we end the film with him.
Yeah, if you're going that route, then too, guess what? You also accidentally have the origin story for the Shocker as well. I like that they glazed over the origin. I like that they didn't waste your time showing him get by a radioactive spider, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, I'll leave that at that.
Granted, I would have liked it if they at least mentioned Uncle Ben. They kind of hint at it when they say, "Oh, Aunt May's been through a lot," but they never mentioned him. And I think that lacking that I mean, Uncle Ben's death has always been the biggest motivation. That was the motivation for him to really become, at least start the path of becoming Spider-Man. And right. I felt like that was missing. I'm not saying that they should reshoot it and add a scene of him getting shot again, whatever, but it would have helped give him a little bit more motivation. Yeah, he's a young kid. He wants to be a superhero. He wants to do good. That's good. That's fine. And if it wasn't for Holland's charm, and like I said before, his earnestness, I think that helps mask that that lack of motivation that isn't there. Now, mind you, once again, the film probably says, okay, well, we all know that. They don't have to mention it and so forth. I take a little issue with that, but
You could not have had a big scene with Uncle Ben and all that in this movie, and from this perspective, it's great that they left out any sort of real exposure to him, because in that instance, Tony Stark trying to be the mentor figure in this film would have been deeply effective and had a lot less impact therein, because what every fanboy, and I'm not gonna go so bold as to predict you, but I know I would be like, he's got Uncle Ben, why the bleep is Stark trying to drop this crap with Uncle Ben out the picture, literally.
yeah.
It's better.
Well, no, here's the thing. I mean, I'm not saying that they should have shown it, but if they reference it, if he was sitting down with his aunt in one of the many scenes they share together, and they actually converse about it. They said, yeah, with the loss of her husband, etc., etc. I think it would have added a lot more, because now Peter Parker has lost his mentor figure, and he's looking towards Stark to supplant it, and being the imperfect, learning as he goes mentor figure as it is.
On that, because that's a great point, and I think like if they was like there was a scene today, Ben is your Uncle Ben has been dead X years or whatever, and here's what could not have happened in this movie: the phrase "with great power comes great responsibility" could not be a thing. Period.
I agree. Period. I'll even take it farther. Him, when Stark takes his suit away and he loses his Stark internship, that would have been the loss of a second mentor. That would have been a lot more powerful.
Maybe.
So,
I think what would have happened is we would have acknowledged it and said it fell short. That's what I feel like would have happened.
Yeah, that's actually exactly what I was about to say. So I mean, it's disappointing, but it's not like it ruined the whole film. It's more a missed opportunity, is the way I look at it. I will compare it to this other film. Now, almost every major Marvel character has had a standalone origin story film where they go from A to Z. Spider-Man: Homecoming and The Incredible Hulk are the kind of two lone exceptions, where the origin story about how they gain their powers is glossed over as quickly as possible. Let's get to it, right?
Well, you're going to actually have that come up too in the Black Panther film, because they already have the Black Panther's origin story in Civil War. So that's another. I like what you're telling us here, though.
Yeah. The difference with, if I was to compare Spider-Man to the Hulk, I will say that the Incredible Hulk, where I really enjoyed the first half of the Incredible Hulk. The moment he gets to the university, the film takes a nosedive for me. I lose interest. Him alone, trying to deal with his curse, essentially, running through Brazilian rainforests, with no shirt, begging and so forth. That was harrowing. The moment he meets up with the other characters and he ends up with a little bit of a tiny support team, I tend to lose interest, and the story just goes crazy. Spider-Man: Homecoming has a better second half, my opinion, the inverse of the Incredible Hulk. But I kind of wish, the one thing I really did like about the Raimi films was that Peter Parker felt like he was alone. It was the great power. With great power comes great responsibility. This was his burden to bear, and nobody could help him. And it gave him a sense of vulnerability and a higher stake of peril that I kind of feel was missing with this film. Yeah, there was the training wheels approach, and Robert Downey Jr., he was hilarious and funny as always. I understand why they did it, but for the first 2/3 of the film, it took away a lot of that peril, a lot of the edge of your seat danger, because there is this remote Deus Ex Machina presence looming over. So if he's gonna get in too much trouble, Tony Stark is gonna sweep in and save the day. And of course, it doesn't help that the trailers give away those saves.
Well,
that's why I feel that the third act was much more thrilling because it finally was him alone.
Well,
Like,
right. I mean, hell, you don't get that. You don't even have a hope. The only reason why you get that is because the first and second act are built the way they do. You find out the dude has a goddamn parachute stuffed up his bug butt or whatever, and then the whole scene where, which I mean, I don't know what was ruined by spoilers and, or excuse me, by trailers and what wasn't. So I didn't see these saves forecasted, but a lot of the build that you get, I mean, it didn't do as much for me because there wasn't as much danger. First of all, there shouldn't be because he's got all that in place, but all that in mind, I think they opt to remove it there so that it hits precisely at the moment you're talking about in the third act. I think that's probably it falls in the third act.
I will say this. You're right about the trailer. It definitely didn't help because the ferry scene.
So they got away in the trailer?
They actually showed Iron Man saving him.
See, that's fucking awful.
Yeah.
Okay, that's and again, it's impossible for me at this point to know how I would feel in that instance, but I can see how that's ruined for you.
The trailer. Let me just spell out a few of the things that the trailer gave away. Right, the Washington Monument scene showed it. It showed the ferry scene splitting in half. Iron Man coming in, saving Spider-Man, holding the ship together. It gave away the almost all of Tony Stark's scenes are in the trailer. Now, I'm not even kidding.
Right.
And
from a marketing perspective, I get it, but guess what? You've ruined Act 1 and Act 2.
Exactly. Even worse, it actually shows a confrontation with Tony Stark where he says that he's pretty much taking away the suit, and it shows Spider-Man in his old costume on the plane fighting the Vulture. It gave away the whole film. Watch, and I'm actually just paraphrasing here, but you saw the whole beat. I watched the trailer. I'm like, okay. He's gonna get in over his head. Tony Stark's gonna say him a couple times, and then he's gonna prove himself by putting on the suit and fighting Vulture. Yeah, I saw the whole damn film in this minute and a half trailer. So yeah, that probably affected it a little bit. But once again, when I go to see a movie, I try to remove myself as much as possible. And
right. Well, yeah, no, and that's awful. Look, it's awful that it went that way. They definitely got that wrong. I mean, for Christ's sake, they're essentially trying to make Tony Stark awesome Uncle Ben. I mean, and he doesn't say with great power comes great responsibility. What's the line? If you're nothing without that suit, then you shouldn't, then you don't deserve it, or something like. Then you shouldn't have it, or whatever. Which is just as good in my mind as with great power comes great responsibility. I mean, that's essentially what that is. So, ruin. Oh, man, God, that is infuriating. I would be pissed too. But in light of the fact that I wasn't hit with that plague, the way it builds is wonderful. Iron Man coming in the second time was sort of a surprise with the way they built that up in my mind. And then you hear the spider suit, they eventually, who they named Karen for reasons I don't completely understand.
Played by Jennifer Connelly, FYI.
There you go. Yeah. And when she says 98%, you're like, oh, it should be fine. Oh, crap. And then, here comes Stark doing his thing. And the way that exchange after the ferry scene goes down, with, if you actually cared, if you cared, you would actually be here. And the suit comes down. He's like, I'm like, what would have been perfect? And I know it's a thing that comes from our show. After he says that, when Stark walks out, he should go, hickatus, figatus, motherfucker. And but no, but.
Well, I'll take you a bite of shawarma.
Why the hell not? And no, and that whole scene, you probably couldn't experience because you were too busy going, God damn trailer.
Well, it did. I mean, it definitely didn't help. And there's another thing. And I try not to be a big stickler when it comes to physics and comic book films. I do have. When I see something that's rubbery and bendy and so forth, like over exaggerated for spectacle, that does take me out of the movie. But that's not what I'm talking about here. The physics of the ferry getting cut in half and still staying afloat with none of the below decks getting flooded. I mean, I'm like sitting there, even for a comic book movie, I'm like, yeah, that is, I'm not buying that. And it's a shame because the scene of him holding the ship together instantly reminded me of the train scene
Right.
from Spider-Man 2. So I think, yeah, it could have had a lot more build-up. It could have been more powerful. But instead we get something that's very physics-defying, something that we've already established with the Deus Ex Machina appearance of Stark, that, okay, and he just talked to him a second ago, so, okay, he's going to rescue it. Oh, he's doing the same thing, and I'm instantly recognizing, oh, that's exactly like it was in Spider-Man 2. Those elements just take so much away from the danger of that scene. Now, it's made up for it a little bit by what you said earlier, that conversation that he has with Tony Stark on the roof. That 2-minute scene is much more interesting than the 15-minute action scene. With the exception of the Washington Monument scene, I honestly didn't enjoy many of the action scenes in this, particularly the final one. The strobe lit breakdance fight battle in the sky on the plane. I couldn't tell what the hell was going on. I was half expecting Owen Wilson to come out and start twirling on the top of it.
Memo to frickin' comic book movies, period. DC, MCU, otherwise. Stop with the goddamn big scenes on the airplane shit. All right? Can we move on to something else, please? Anything else? Another ferry boat. Whatever. Do a ferry boat scene that Demas can believe in so you can reentrust his confidence in aquatic travel, okay? Some shit. Just enough with the goddamn airplanes at the end of movies.
But it wasn't even just the fact that it was on an airplane. You couldn't tell what was going on. The editing was shit. It was bad.
That was all me, dude. I'm just sick of the motherfucker.
No, I agree with you. I'm 100%. I was done with airplanes when they did that stupid cartoon ending of Die Another Day. I was sick of it back then.
There you go.
But okay, the big controversy about the film was the reveal of MJ. What are your thoughts on that one?
So much like everything else, I love that they're doing every stinking thing they can to distance themselves from the Raimi film. Because here's the thing, and I like that they actually set their expectations. Look, this isn't going to be an epic. There is no way in hell, scope-wise, we can compete with the Raimi films, 1 and 2. That third one was trash. That's technically not a Raimi film, if I understand right.
No, it is.
Well, I'm sorry, and I'm sure he is too. Moving on, the fact that they were trying to distance themselves from that, it was bad enough that people were going to automatically compare this Spider-Man to Tobey Maguire, and they eliminated anybody trying to compare their current MJ to Kirsten Dunst. And I love that they did their best to try to keep from 2 of those crimes to be committed. It's a spin that I like. Granted, I'm somewhat nerdy, so it kind of worked in my direction. And as much as we're trying to talk about empowering women beyond their looks and stuff like that in society, I think this is speaking to the time. This MJ is what I believe is a fair interpretation of what people are looking for in the female characters, female protagonists, and whatnot.
Now, some people brought up her race. That didn't bother me. In fact, the diversity in the film, and it is a very, very diverse cast. But as somebody who was born in Queens, if you're in a high school in Queens, it's gonna be diverse. It is. It's a fact. If it wasn't, then it'd be outrageous. Although, I'm looking at you, Kevin Feige. You said a diverse film in Queens without representing the Greek. Not one souvlaki stand was shown. What do we have? I'm offended. There were no Greeks up there. I did not feel represented.
I unfortunately, despite having more faith in humanity than you at many times, I have become jaded to the fact that Greeks make up only but 1/28 of the population and are such a minority that they're not even indicated as a minority in a diverse population. So we're going to move on.
Well, funny enough, Queens, Astoria, Queens specifically, has the largest Greek population in the entire United States. I honestly don't give a shit, but no, I give a shit about the Greek population. They're good people. They make good food, tasty. Try it; it's tremendous. But
Kopita bitches, know it.
Okay, her race didn't bother me. Hell, even her character changes. I was never, I people will probably disagree, but I never really thought of really much of Mary Jane. Now she's better in the comics than she's ever been in the movies. Whatever. The only thing that bothered me was the reveal, the fake name reveal. Oh, she's not Mary Jane. She's Michelle, and then she reveals that she's MJ. This is like in the last few years. It's like the fourth time I've seen this twist in movies. It happened with Robin in Dark Knight Rises. It happened with Blofeld in Spectre. It happened with John Harrison slash Khan in Star Trek Into Darkness. That stop doing that kind of crap. You didn't,
That is kind of, I'll agree with that.
this is like, oh, people should be excited. Oh, it's MJ. Instead, my entire theater groaned, literally groaned. They're like, oh.
Hey, your entire theater was too stupid to stay to the end of the credits of a Marvel film. F them, okay? I said it.
Chris Evans stole the show. His scenes. His scenes.
I'm not going to put him ahead of RDJ because the mentor scenes with him were great, but big nods to that mofo right there. Those were so money. Money as hell.
What would you say if you think about it? If I told you that there would be a Marvel film where Tony Stark would be the more serious one and Captain America would be the funny one?
Ah, that's a good call. Oh, shit, I never thought of that. Nice.
But Chris Evans, I love it, like, because whenever he makes a small cameo in another Marvel film, it's always a comedic one. He was one of the best parts. 30 seconds again, best parts in Thor: The Dark World when he showed up there, and in this film he was my props. He was awesome. Best end credit scene. Screw you, Thanos. Captain America's end credit scene. By far the
I don't
best.
say that. No, that was fun. That was fun. That was fun. I laughed. I belly laughed twice during that delivery.
I would recommend seeing it in theaters. I just don't think that I don't think it's the greatest Spider-Man movie. Everybody might expect that finally Marvel gets the character back. You might expect it to be the best. It's probably the second best in my opinion. I think that Spider-Man 2 is still the better. If you're to compare it to the other Spider-Man films, I think that the second Raimi film was better. But no, it was a very good effort. I'd recommend it. I don't think it's great.
Well, yeah, it wasn't going to do better than the Raimi film just simply because it wasn't a character on its own. Like I said, it's going to be something that's fit into place for a bigger card, and this was an excellent keystone to make that happen. The Spider-Man is a character that moves throughout the universe of Marvel, historically at least, in a very interesting way, and yet still has enough of an identity to carry a story by himself. And what we saw in this movie, I think, allows for that character to exist in the MCU today.
The rumor is, and mind you, it's a rumor, although I'd love to see it happen, that in the next Spider-Man standalone film, which is going to come out after the Infinity War saga, might be him and Captain America.
Okay,
Which
sure.
I would love to see because I love their interaction in Civil War. The Brooklyn Queens exchange.
Oh man, that was wonderful. That actually made that. New Yorkers do that. That's basically what I thought to myself when I saw that.
Anyway, that just about does it for this episode of Default Assault. Make sure to come back next week for our underrated comedies part 2, where I share my 3 most underrated comedies. Kyle shared his 3 last week. Awesome episode. Check it out. Kyle, are you looking forward to these underrated comedies?
I am, dude. You picked some excellent movies. This was an episode I had to do a bit of research on, but as I said before, there's one on your list that if I had my head out of my butt, I would have put on mine. But it's better that I didn't, because then that way I had an extra movie to talk about. And but no, I'm looking forward to it. You had 3 excellent choices, And yeah, I think it's gonna be a real good episode.
See, between the two of us, it's a whole cinematic package right here. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at Default Hilarity and on Facebook, Hilarity by Default. While you're at it, check out our website, hilaritybydefault.com. I should probably address this right now. A lot of people are asking, wait, hang on, how come you're not reviewing War for the Planet of the Apes this week? There's a reason. I haven't had the chance to see the other two previous incarnations. I could not fit it in my schedule. From everything I've heard, it's an excellent, excellent film.
But if you want to donate cash to him so he can afford to do that kind of thing, he'll take it.
Maybe I should start a Patreon. But no, I'll probably get around to it. I'm very, very curious about War for the Planet of the Apes, especially from all the positive things I've heard about. I might, let me know in the comments below. Should I review it when it comes out later this year, or if I fill in some of the missing gap weeks or something? Let me know. Let me see if you're interested.
Yes.
Kyle, where can we find you?
Of course, as I work here on Hilarity by Default, on the Default Assault with Demos, as you help us handle our cinematic package. I am Kyle Nash, student of the game. You can find me on Twitter at the SOTG, and of course on Facebook as the student of the game.
That was fantastic delivery. I applaud you.
Hey, I'm all about knowing how to deliver my cinematic package, baby.
Well, on that note, we'll see you next week by default.